Well, I guess we'll have to work on
That's
it.
the minimum. We're checking the minimum.
All right, gentlemen, I think we're about ready.
Developments all the time.
Yeah, and so we'll talk a little bit about.
Okay, we are live.
Developments all the time. Developmental.
Yeah, and so we'll talk, well, there's more coming, so right.
Okay, we are live.
See, the only thing is,
Yeah.
you have to mute this, not your computer. There you go. And turn on our computer.
We just don't have the professional camera set up, so hopefully that will.
And I don't know,
Apologies.
It's a better angle on me anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I'll be able to pull up that document you want.
I look 25 pounds.
So I don't sit in front of that camera when it's down.
Okay. Good morning. We are here today, Monday, June 1st, for the Tompkins County IDA Labor Committee, and I will turn it over to Prentice to kick us off.
Good morning. We are opening up the meeting.
Do some intros, maybe? We're all familiar with each other.
I'm Prentice Smith, part of the IDA, also part of the Waivers Local 785.
Rick Warner, I'm an executive board member of Local 81 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters.
Fred Swayze, business representative of Carpenter's Local 277. Honored to be part of this community.
Kurt Anderson, Director of Operations IAD, and I support the IDA through the local labor policy and review.
Kelly Bauda, Administrative Director, Tompkins County IDA, and Director of Business Services at IAED.
I know Arthur, Ithaca Area Economic Development. I'll just be taking the minutes.
Greg Mezzi, Tompkins County Legislator and IDA Board Member.
Russ Genzel, IDA Legal Counsel. Good morning. And just as a heads up, I had to drop at 10. I apologize. I have a conflict that I just can't get out of.
That's okay. Thank you for joining.
Of course.
Hey, Russ and Greg, can you hear me okay for my position, or should I move closer?
You're good.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the annual review of the local labor policy. And we turn it over to.
Yeah, give you a little history. Because we've got a couple new members on the committee. So in 2016, the IDA adopted its first local labor utilization policy. The idea being to incentivize the use of local labor, being defined as zip code of residence, Tompkins plus contiguous SIPs. Okay. Realizing also that some of the trade unions have different footprints, but that was how it was defined at the time. It was Tompkins plus 6 zip code of residence. There was no threshold to hit. It was just, you need to report, right? You need to provide monthly reports in a form that John Grettrich had created for us. I started in 2020. And then COVID sent everybody home about 2 weeks later, and here comes with me the stack of printed reports. Here you go, buddy. Look at these, right? So it took me probably 6 months to get through all that. Long story short, in December of 2021, which is, you see when this revised policy was adopted, through the period of 2021, this committee met and then presented to the IDA a revised policy that for the first time set a threshold and a couple other caveats that have since been updated, and I'll go through those in a second. And also with that threshold, set or established a waiver process. So the data that we saw initially was effectively, if you do nothing, if the general contractor tries not and cares not at all about local labor on the projects, again, from that stack of papers that I looked at, you effectively end up at like 33%. That's the do nothing number is where it comes in at, right? And that's not good enough in our opinion, but that was very helpful to look at. with a modicum of effort, the committee decided that, okay, probably 2/3 is a reasonable start, but while we're in here, why not bump it up to 75% and see if it's attainable? One interesting note on the policies as they've changed. So that was the big change in December of 2021, where we actually set goals, right? And couple other things that came with it was a notification to the head of the Building Trades Council, which since that time has been Todd Brewer of electricians. That it went from email notification, except those were getting lost, certified mail notification. The idea being that we meet with the project sponsors, so the developer, the GC, whoever, within 5 days of approval at the IDA. The idea being that that would be early enough in the bid process to say, hey, Building Trades Council, I don't know all your members and I don't know all the contractors. Heads up, this project is alive. It got approved, and be on the lookout and ready to bid. Again, emails were getting lost. We now changed it to certified mail, but that notification is still a requirement of the initial update in 2021 and still to this day. I'm going through the policy now, proof of local bids, so I need to have your bid lists, right? And there's another step in there where you also have to send me a justification of if you didn't solicit from a local contractor for a particular scope of work, why didn't you? Right? Did you not have a relationship? Or did you submit and they chose not to bid, and that's fine too, right? So in addition to their bid list, I need why you didn't solicit from a local contractor. But keep in mind, just kind of a disparity here. I don't really care where the contractor is located. So Rochester Davis Fetch, for instance, right out of Rochester naturally, hires a lot of through the local hall. That's fine. I really don't care where they could be in Timbuktu for all I care, as long as they hire locally. The idea behind that collection was just who is or is not bidding locally on these projects. Do we have local tradespeople or contractors, right? So more of a ticking boxes. The big thing is the reporting. So I count beans pretty much. They need to submit to me. Initially, we've gotten better on this. They needed to submit. So today's June 1st. I would, in the past, would reasonably expect to have projects reports for March. So 60 days after the month concludes is when I get those reports. The problem was that created a lag time in data report. I couldn't tell who was, by the time we realized there was a scope of work issue, that those guys were gone, right? So we have since advanced that now. Now it's every week. They need to submit weekly reports. They get paid every week. They're submitting their timesheets every week. We want them every week. So we've advanced that. When we initially started the waiver process, it gave the administrative director, and at that time it was Heather, it's now Kelly. There's 4 different categories of waiver that the administrative director could approve. Any other circumstances would go to the IDA. There have never been any other circumstances that, well, I can get back. Recently there was one, but and that's something we're going to talk about today is kind of the waiver process. But we've actually since delayed the timeline of waiver. It used to be when we updated this in 2021, we were using new data, and then we tried it out in the field and we realized there was some tweaking that needed done. The clock was ticking if a contractor, the GC, submitted a waiver request. Today, we had 14 days to act on it, or it was like a pocket approval, right? The problem is the IDA meets at best every 30 days. So we've actually slowed that down to allow a 45-day span on that, so that there's at least one IDA meeting in between should we need it, right? So we've improved, we've tightened up a little bit. There are exemptions related to affordable housing that you see in here. So if a big affordable housing project comes to the IDA, they're exempted from the policy. Default, they're subject to recapture at any time. Again, there was a recent incident, and we'll get into that project in a second, where in lieu of recap, there was a penalty imposed. that project. So, the one thing I wanted to mention was we apply the policy that was in place at the time of approval to these projects. So, projects that were, it's like McKinley's a great, I call it McKinley. It's
Here,
got-
State Street.
It's got other names.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started up with the.
Right, you know what I'm talking about.
VSA.
McKinley was approved under the 2016 policy, so all they got, as long as, and they do. So Purcell's over there, they just submit their monthly reports, I got their bid list. There's nothing else to do, right? Even though it was years from approval to when it actually enacted and it started breaking ground, it's subject to that policy. So as it stands, the policy we have, it was updated a little bit in April of 25, but it was actually 2 years prior. The one that actually sets the threshold, so approved December 9th, 2021, there've only been, well, there's only 3 active projects
Yeah.
that were under that threshold requirement. Well, Yellow Barn Solar now will be another one, but there's 3 that are actually like happening. Paramore Solar, which is up on 79 over by the Y, which is no problem at all. The Breeze, which is the gun factory up the hill, which we'll discuss in a little bit. And the other one is the Dean, which is closed out now. And I have some data from the Dean that we'll look at after Carpenter Park. But that's kind of the history of the policy. One of the things that we wanted to, well, I guess let me stop for a second and ask if anybody has any questions about the policy or any glaring concerns right from the get-go.
How adjustable is the policy with the IDA if you see something and say, hey, we gotta adjust this because this now isn't working? Like you went from 16 to 21 to 2005 or 2025.
How it's gone in the past, yeah, would be recommendations of this committee to the board, when the board approves or denies.
So if there's a recommendation of the committee that we all agree that there's a loophole or something's getting missed, a recommendation about fix can be recommended.
Yeah, and actually I have one to say, well, apprentice, and I have one to suggest to you, but at this point, I mean, do you have any questions about where we're at with the policy or what the goal or plan is for it?
I think, because I've been in the mix when you guys started in 2016, to where we first started talking with you about your role was, then COVID and all that, but I think it has come a long way from where it started. And I think even the projects that you talked about that kind of were under the old policy that kind of took a long time to come on board and policy change. I do know that some of them made their best efforts, even though they didn't have certain requirements based off the old policy that they were working under.
Yep.
So hopefully moving forward, those efforts are strengthened by this policy and see some different results.
Yeah, that's a great note, and I think a testament to, I would say, most of the GCs. They do care and they do, and like it or don't, depending on your scope of work, the Carpenter, I call it Carpenter Park.
Yeah.
There's many phases of it. That's what it first came in at. They've been active reporters, and there are some that's tough for me to get reports from them. They're on it. So they constantly ask me what percentage they're at. Where are we? Like, they want to know. And I said, remember, you don't have any threshold to hit. They're like, I know, but we want to know. So there are good actors in there that do want to do the right thing.
Or the efforts are being made.
That's right. That's right. So, take this a step further. We now, the IDA, when I say we, have contracted with a third-party independent consultant to do the labor reporting and the spot visits. Okay, this was kind of an add-on for my role, and I have a full-time job. So the idea of traveling around to these sites and checking logs, this was kind of one recommendation that came out at that was the last update in April 10 of 2025, though it's not referenced here. We contract with a group called Loki Brill out of Rochester. They do the monitoring for several IDAs across the state. They collect all kinds of insurances, licenses, they want pictures of photo IDs for everybody that's gonna be on site. Then they show up on site and say, yeah, that's you, or who are you, right? I don't see you in the book, so, that, the first project that they've done that on is Caramore Solar. It's fine, that's no problem, that's gonna hit its marks, no problem at all. But it was a good one for us to work through our processes with them, so what, part of that last policy update was really to tie our policy and timelines into theirs. So again, I mentioned the monthly reports were due 2 months after the month that expired. Well, Wilkie Brew requires it weekly. I'm like, yeah, that works better for us anyway, right? Let's make it weekly. And it's going fine, right? The Caramore Solar is kind of our dry run with them on how to do those projects. I'm on a call later today or tomorrow regarding Yellow Barn Solar, the big daddy coming in up there. Southworks as a amalgamated project got its incentives packaged to the IDA, and then each project will have a Loki grill. And I should say that this third party consultant, this was a recommendation of Todd way back when we were revising it the first time. He's like, have the contractor or the developer pay for the monitoring, and thus far nobody's had any complaints about it at all. So they put money into escrow. We pay Loki Bros monthly reports. They're, like I said, collecting everything, all the paperwork. They're doing the site visits. They're reporting, any concerns or violations to us. Again, Caramore is the first one they're doing. We haven't had any problems. But one other really nice thing that they suggested, and this kind of is a nice segue into what Prentice and Kelly and I have talked about as far as making a little tweak to the policy. We used to have, again, that 2-week clock. So Rick, you submitted a waiver to me today. You should know by June 15th, and if you don't, you're good to go. That was putting a lot of pressure on the administrative director to make big decisions, not necessarily with the approval of the IDA, or at least the awareness of the IDA. And the director was authorized to do that. They could or could not. But what we're kind of talking about, right? So we slowed the timeline down, because Loki Brill's standard policy is 45 days. Like, we want the ability for at least an IDA meeting in between. And one thing that we're kind of talking about, and we're suggesting, and to you, this committee, that instead of having 4 eligible waivers granted by the administrative director, and that's cost differential of 10% or more, specialized services, I don't have it in front of me, but local labor not available, and then there's another one. The 4 administrative, they're listed as well.
Yeah.
What do you got, right?
Well, yeah, the local skills, specialized skills not available,
Yeah.
cost differential 10% or more. Extenuating circumstances.
That's the other.
Mhm.
Yeah, so warranty issues, documented lack of qualified bidders or workers, documented need for specialized services not available locally. It's elevators are a good example of that. Cost differential 10% or other. So right now, the 4 major ones are at the discretion of the administrative director, and the other is the IDA. What we've talked about doing is just flipping those. If we're gonna have an IDA meeting in between, let's let the IDA decide whether they grant that waiver or don't. What is the justification? And then they can make that decision. It takes the pressure off the administrative director, and me, quite frankly. And I think further empowers the IDA to be aware of what's going on out there, right? And maybe you call in a GC to ask, or the developer to ask a question about this stuff, right?
Kelly, Kara, I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize, but I do have to jump. Kelly, we can catch up later in the day, and if anything pops up in my absence, we can discuss that. I apologize. I just have a conflict I can't miss. So
That's okay.
sorry,
Thanks,
Kurt.
Ross.
Take care.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I guess in that situation, it eliminates maybe a certain individual administrator of one person making a decision being compromised or having conflict of interest that
Right.
isn't disclosed.
You got it.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
Yep, that's one when we think about this. 75% is still ambitious. I won't lie.
Mhm.
But there are waivers for that reason, but I think this way it brings the waiver requests to the light. right? And the IDA can have a full decision. That's one thing we talked about as being a potential, a tweak that really tightens it up.
And I'll add to that, I spoke with Stephen Meyer, who is Russ's partner at Harris Beach, Murtha. He does a lot with the Monroe County IDA and they use Loki Brill as well. And he said that when waiver requests are presented, that Loki Brill does a really good job of vetting them. So I think that additionally adds to just tightening up the process and the validity of them. So.
And then, Loki Brill did do a good job. There are a couple waivers up the hill at Caramore related to like the racks, the racking. That team travels with the racks and puts those racks in. Todd is aware of this, but
So specialized still.
yeah, and they vetted the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's,
All right, but that's a good point of discussion.
that's their, right, I mean,
Somebody else can learn how to do that.
everybody
Oh,
training in that,
yeah,
every
yeah.
trade is, yeah,
Definitely.
that's a discussion for another day,
Definitely.
or something,
Well,
but.
it's a great discussion to be had by the IDA when that comes up.
Right, I mean,
I wouldn't know that if the waiver request came to us.
yeah, I mean, it would have to be, here's the waiver, and then Labor Committee or everybody kind of look at it and say, how specialized is this? Because then you open the door to everything can be specialized,
Right.
I've had situations where under warranty or whatever, well, I get the warranty work, I get, if you have management oversight of the warranty work, but the skill can be done by that appropriate trade in the area or the workforce. It's not a specialty warranty, just need to make sure it's installed under the guidelines of the warranty. Same with a specialty thing of, this, I gotta do it because these are the people that only know how to do it. Well, if it's relative to any trade in the area, well, they're all training in the same thing. So how specialized is it?
Well, so procedurally, it wouldn't be this committee, it would be Prentice on behalf of.
Right,
Mhm.
yes,
Your
you're correct,
trade company.
it'd be a
Right.
discussion to have to review it. say.
Right, so if this waiver came up, then
So
please
definitely.
check with all of you and say, is anybody doing this?
Definitely.
Like, sorry to put that on you, but.
No,
that's you.
no.
Well, it's fair because I've seen many things over the years from all over the state that I've worked with the carpenters union as a business rep of different things getting waivers and you're like, hey, wait a second, and not necessarily related to the carpenters, you'd be like, well, I thought iron workers, they do that all the time. Why do
Right.
they give special clearance on that? You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so.
When you bring up racking systems, I believe all our trades do that. We have different kinds of
Well, that's a good
CBAs
point,
and,
yeah.
and
So,
contracts already aligned where certain trades are already on certain things when it comes to solar, so. There's, and I'm definitely gonna be aware of it and definitely bring the knowledge that I have from working in that field to the table.
And the nice part also, and one of that, I forgot to reference this, when we made the adjustments to our policy to match Loki Brills, it's 45 days in advance of the expected start date.
Yeah.
right,
Okay, so if you've already got one boot on the ground up there,
No
So
waiver.
no dice, right? So this gives you time to be more proactive in front of that. In the past, we would get waivers kind of retroactively.
Yeah.
And well, there was a recent incident where one got denied, or several got denied because the work was already done. Right? That doesn't give anybody a heads up on what's going on. So in my opinion, I think giving the power to the IDA allows for the time for consideration for Prentice to bring forward those, well, actually, we got guys that do that. And they may not want to take the project, but at least it raises awareness and they have an opportunity,
well, I think that's the first goal. Everybody has the fair opportunity first to
Definitely.
have an opportunity to bid or put local labor workforce on the job.
Mhm.
Union, non-union, whatever,
Right.
right? And then, once that exhausted, now, was that exhausted to its max due to the policy? Did everybody, dot their i's, cross their t's? Okay, now we don't have that available person, contractor, whatever, here's what we gotta do. That's understandable. So.
Yeah.
It's always about, everybody wants that fair shot with the policy. And if every local contractor or non-union union says, no, we're not interested, we're too busy, well, okay. At least we tried.
Well, right. And then
Everybody has the fair opportunity.
Essentially comes up in a little bit too, a curious case study, and maybe I don't have all the facts, but your point is taken, and that is why we have advanced the labor report. We've hired a third-party consultant. We advanced the reporting timeline and retarded the waiver timeline just to allow as much opportunity as possible.
And it's reasonable, 45 days.
Yeah,
It's very reasonable.
before work starts, so.
Right.
So that's where the policy is. That's the one suggestion we had for you all to consider and or put forward, but,
I think,
but we're open, I mean, I'm open to whatever.
I think that, going back to that 45 days, it is reasonable because, I've had some discussions with Chemung County IDA that, people have come to them after the project is done and all of a sudden want all these incentives. And I've had to go and point out to them like,
We
hey,
just had one of
your
them.
policy is a little, you're not covering this correctly because now all these groups and here's what happened over there. And they're like, oh, okay, so I've got them to kind of put some eyeballs and understand that maybe they gotta make some adjustments to their policy too. To make sure that they don't come afterwards and say, oh, we want all these incentives now, and the building's built or almost done.
Well, there's an incident, and I realize it's being taped, so I won't
Right.
specifically reference it. I'll speak in generic terms, but yes, several scope, they weren't close on the number. Uh-oh, but unfortunately, I mean, there were confluence of factors. Our timeline at that time was slower. We
Right.
didn't get the weekly reports, but it was also painful and usually delayed. There were a lot of issues. And, 6 months ago, right? Like, hey, how far along are you? Oh, like 99%.
That's a
Whoa,
problem.
right? Say that again, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't anywhere close and weren't paying attention despite many notices, and they got fined. And that's, that's the first time that a punitive measure had been taken on a project. But again, there've only been 3. Caramore Solar,
Fine.
it's
Yep.
fine,
Mhm.
right? And actually, when we're off the policy, we're gonna get into data and we'll talk about the dean specifically, which is concluded, and we'll talk about waivers, et cetera.
So explain to me I understand the exemptions of the affordable housing, but, why can't some tracking or just making sure they're doing the correct things through low-key brill or whatever, still be involved in that?
Good question, I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, right, so for instance, what's Aurora? Is it on Aurora Street or what is it? It's
State
affordable
Street.
housing that Dan's outfit out of Steuben
Oh,
County. What is that project called?
Stately.
The Stately. The
Mhm.
Stately is a vision development project that is predominantly affordable housing, and they don't even report. So as it's written, it says,
I think because do they have other reporting because of the state monitoring? Maybe?
well, they don't report because as it's defined
It-
here, they hit these
they're
marks, are
kept to
exempt from this policy.
Right.
They don't have to give me anything,
Right.
right? And that is how the policy is written currently.
Mhm.
I do know if it's a prevailing wage job, they have to be put to the.
I'm sure they have other
Yeah,
regulations.
yeah.
Certainly through the state.
Especially if it's a HUD project, there's
Yeah.
a prevailing wage tied to that. And that's a slippery slope too with some of this. There's some loopholes in those policies.
We're making little steps to make the policy
But
better.
That's on a bigger scale, that's at a federal level, the way their loopholes work, and found that out a year ago on some projects. That had, there's HUD involvement, and then after the fact, it was like, oh, but this was exempt from it, and here's why, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. But it is what it is, that's the rules, and that's how you play by them, but I just, thought, I know they're exempt and from the policy, but, can some sort of reporting go on, because the percentage of affordable housing that could be built in the future, you still want to be able to track what percentage of local workforce is getting put on there, even though they are exempt, waiver exemptions, I guess is what you're saying, right? They can just do whatever and you don't have.
Well, this whole policy, they don't have to submit a bid list. to
Right.
me, They don't, I don't have any of that for that project, or if there are others that don't come to mind. I think the idea was just, this county's so desperate for, if I recall correctly from the time it was written, not saying it's right or wrong, was this county so desperate for housing that anybody can afford that
Yes,
we would just one less burden for them to do it, is how I recall that going.
okay. I was kind of more looking for a compare and contrast. Of here's what happens on these affordable housing projects, here's what percentage of local labor is being used and not used compared to how the policies in effect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Under these guidelines, here's, we hit these numbers, but under here, under these exemptions, because it's affordable housing, everybody realizes that housing is important, we need it, and there's gonna be more of it all over the place. But here's what happened here, so maybe they balanced out, this was higher, that was lower, whatever.
I think it's something that's worth looking into, because there's so much abundance of, affordable housing going up, you know what I mean? I think it's something that we should possibly look into.
How do you get there, or how do you do it and make it all workable for everybody?
Well, again, it's gonna be, yeah, look, I'm agnostic on this, but, that's gonna be a discussion or a recommendation to the full
Right.
committee, right, on how any of these things get done. I mean, look, from my standpoint, I get a neat monthly report from Loki Rill. They're gonna want money from the contractor, or from the developer, or, you know, set an escrow.
Right,
So.
yes, I was in the back, as I was talking.
Yeah.
I was
I did
thinking
all
about
those
that too, you know, we're back to the affordable housing piece, the contract you gotta put, you know, so how do you achieve maybe a contrasting comparison with a total exemption to a policy that, a developer, contractors have to follow, and where's the differences? You know, that's all.
Well, if it's for pure data collection purposes, I mean, Loki Rill will do whatever you tell them to do, as long as there's money to pay the
Right,
bills.
right.
Right, and that's the other part, so.
But it is possible, I'm just spitballing here, again, being agnostic on this, that you require them to report and go through the same motions, it's just they don't have to do the waivers, right? Or like they just have to give you information.
Yeah.
At their own expense. That is certainly a possibility, or you can suggest taking this whole thing out, I mean, again, it's the discretion of the committee and the IDA.
And I don't know if there's any legal parameters around that. I can check with Ross.
It's kind of a.
They just wanted to make it easier on
Yeah,
affordable housing.
yeah.
'Cause they
Right.
wanted- That's why the committee, I think, originally did it.
Greg, do you have any thoughts? And there's somebody else on this.
Duck joined,
Oh.
Duxon.
No, I'm good with the conversation and direction. Nothing specific to add.
Well, how do you wanna move on? You call them all plans, I don't know.
I mean, I like the new change to the policy.
We suggest.
Okay.
It's suggested.
Switching the waivers to the
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, but like you said, it's the decision of the whole board, right?
It
Mhm.
would be ultimately your recommendation to adopt or not your recommendation. Thoughts on the exemption to the policy on affordable housing?
I mean, I'm okay with it right now. I think eventually we're gonna have to look into, to see, at least for the reporting part. For comparison numbers, I think it would be worth looking into eventually.
Okay.
I mean, I know we have so much affordable housing in this area right now.
That's a good question. So when we're talking about the one down, how many affordable projects have been approved recently? That, you don't have to have the answer right now, but then perhaps for a next
Mhm.
discussion on this topic is how many are there, or how many do we anticipate coming? Because it may be, to your point, it may be a great data point.
I
It may
guess,
be great information to be had that
Right.
doesn't discourage affordable housing, but maybe we have an inventory.
I guess I'm trying to, in my experience, everything I've been involved with, I'm trying to be politically correct on what happens with some of these affordable housing projects, is that there's very limited use of local labor in those projects. And, you know, they're the ones that come through the homes and community renewal to the state, right? And we all understand the economics of that. But you get some projects, they're big projects, $25 million, $30 million, $50 million affordable housing projects, as low as 10 million. And you usually go in there and you don't have anybody local from the area working there. That I know factually. So that's where I kind of say, hey, we all want affordable housing, we know all the stuff around that, but if you've got $100 million worth of affordable housing in your area, or even 50 million, and you're getting less than 33% of local labor participation, you know, what's, you know, how do you, you know, work with that, you know, and encourage that, I guess, to say, to have more local labor.
Yeah, you know, it'd probably be a good standalone conversation related to that. And one thing I can think of is timing, right?
Yes.
Like how many of these projects of what capital investment are happening at the same time as other big projects, and is there enough labor for that? So maybe a conversation around IDA policy as it pertains to affordable housing and the timeline of those projects in our community would be warranted.
Not to stop affordable housing being built,
Right.
but how do you engage enough of local labor to be involved with that? So.
Yeah, and this policy's been a series of steps to move from nothing to something to now something to monitor, making these little tweaks and then like seeing how it goes, you know. It's a good one.
But like I said, if you had a way to do a compare and contrast, right, as a start, then you can maybe craft something as you move forward around it, say, oh, this is what's going on here and this there. Just kind of an idea, a thought, based off of what I've seen out there.
All right, so we will rework the language on the waiver section of the policy and include that in this month's agenda meeting.
Do you need a motion from the committee recommending the change?
Yes, so Prentice, if you would like to request a motion to approve that or
Yes.
recommend that.
Yeah, I would request a motion to approve the waiver and exemptions through what we have written and see who approves or disapproves.
Second that,
Do you want to make the motion?
I'll second that.
You
I
can't make the motion.
sorry.
So
I'll move it, Kelly.
Okay, Greg's making the motion, Rick seconds, thank you.
Oh,
And then, yep, go ahead.
all for it? Oh.
Yeah.
Any objections?
Okay, great.
Right.
10:15. Waiver process update. Waiver process.
That was
From
in the conversation. Mhm.
Well, actually, that's a good point. So Saving Carpenter, and I apologize for folks on the screen, there was a glitch. You're not gonna see this, but I will send it to you later. I have in my hands data that Prentice has seen. This was from our policy review a year ago. This actually touches on a lot of projects from when we first started cutting data. We're not gonna talk about those right now, but it's something for you to digest for later. But the one project in there that we should talk about is the Dean, which is just kind of an interesting case study because the Dean had a threshold hit. Again, some of the projects you see there. So this was initial. These are projects that really came through the 2016 policy. And all I had to do was submit monthly reports, right? So that's West Seneca. Organic Nature's the
Green Star.
Green Star, thank you. Art House, Library Place, Herald Square, City Center, Ithacan. Carpenter Park was included in there from a year ago. We're gonna go in further detail on that in a second. Asteri downtown. All they had to do was report. So you'll see just some data. Data can be overwhelming, so we're not gonna spend too much time on this, but I encourage you to look at this information. And again, Greg and Doc, I'll send this to you after, but just trying to look at the information that the data provided. Now, if you flip to the second page, the Dean is really interesting. So I did track, as I do, I tracked all the data. And then I tracked the data with the waivers removed, just to see, right? So again, 30, what did I say, 33%? Oh, yeah, that's good. 33% is the do nothing rate. Where everybody's included and there weren't waivers that were required, okay? The dean is interesting because you got a list in front of you. For waivers that were granted for the dean for different scopes of work and who the primary contractor was for those. They barely got over the threshold, right? And there were a handful of them offered. These are the primaries. It's possible there were others, but I'm just looking on the bid list. But it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 waivers to get 75%, right? Just informational purposes. Now, again, we were improving our skills in the waiver process and the policy, etc. So I mean, it's not, it's just information for you to have that doing nothing always ends up around 33%. Being waived, I'd say a fair number of times gets you to 75. So there's a divide there, and I think we can improve by again changing the policy to know well in advance on, you know, where they expect their shortfalls. Now, kind of 2 points on this. There's the interesting note on the dean, which I don't think it was, I don't know all the details. I don't think it was fair that they got picketed.
Which one? Trying to remember which one the dean is.
401 State Street. It's the one that used to
Right
have.
down.
Going up to the right.
Yeah, in front on this side of McKinley.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
Same parking lot.
Yeah.
But if you look at the list, Dake, Lowry, and Davis Fetch were invited to bid, and they took I admittedly, I did not call them to ask, but the standard, bid list, they're like declined to bid or did not respond, right? Like these guys were declined to bid. So it's just interesting, and I think it's just because they don't hire local doesn't mean they didn't try. Now, they probably could have done better, and one thing I think we can do better, and Prentice and I have talked about this, is really two things. One, when you get that piece of certified mail that says, hey, project coming, whoever's getting that mail needs to share that with all folks,
Right.
folks. This is
Yes.
coming,
I got you.
call them, right? Or let me call them, introduce you. The other thing, if you look at the first paragraph of the policy, the very last sentence, the first paragraph, it also encourages the use of local suppliers whenever possible and can provide applicants with a vendor list upon request. I have had several, not recently, but in the past, between 2020 and now, several waiver requests or comments from a particular GC who works a lot locally and says, I don't know who does that. And what we, the IDA, have been asking for from the council, and I know it's a pain in the butt to make this list by trade, of like, it would be really helpful to have a list of all the pipe fitters that are around, or who hire locally, like in their contact person and name and number, right? So that, so we're helping them make or be aware of these opportunities to hire locally or through with local labor. And if they don't know them, then there's kind of two things. One, well, let us facilitate introduction. I actually know somebody who could set up a meeting so you know who they are. Or number two, when you submit, if I'm able to give you the developer or the general contractor list of folks who do this scope of work, and then you submit to me your bid list and they're not on there, and you say, well, we couldn't find anybody that did it. It's like, did you call anybody on the list, right? I think, I realize it's a heavy lift, have the trades update this every year. It's probably frustrating. I have a couple. As you can imagine, I have the electricians. That's about it. So, it would be great to have some sort of list or even someone in your respective trades that can serve as the point contact for making introductions or getting a list or something. So that my ideal scenario is when we meet with the team so within 5 days, we get them to send the certified mail out. And then shortly after I meet with the team, So today we're having Yellow Barn Solar, it had been rescheduled from prior, but where we go through the policy and we talk about what the requirements are. And I'd like to, in those meetings, say, and by the way, I'm gonna email you the stack of recommended contractors around here, so you don't come back to me later and say, I don't know who did it. You know, oh, like, oh, by the way, here it is. Or here's the point person for your respective trades that can serve as the point of reference, right? Did you call Rick about the plumbers and steam fitters? Oh, no, I didn't do that. Well, tough luck.
To go back, because there's so many jobs and I can see them, but I can't remember. So the dean was the existing building,
Yes.
where the old.
Oh, that-
No.
All right, so
Gateway Bill.
that was us that orchestrated that protest. That was more individually to the contractor that was awarded the job, because we have a statewide labor dispute ongoing with them. And that was what that was. It wasn't in reference to
Okay,
the way the bids went or whatever. It was this contractor that was selected, that you could see that same protest in Syracuse and all.
the GC or
The sum,
yes, I know what you're talking about.
yes, that's what that was about, so.
But is there not an element though of unfairness if these folks? So I know there were some REF guys down there, but like, if you chose not to bid, then.
Right, and that's,
Come on.
you are correct on that. So before anything of that nature happens, the due diligence is done, right? Okay. That particular subcontractor is a statewide labor dispute with them, right? But most of the time, I have to say, hey, all these contractors that I see didn't bid it, so what's their argument, what's their fight, you know?
Yeah.
But particular in the world of labor, certain contractors you have disputes with, and you're making a public awareness of your dispute.
Okay.
And what's going on with this contract.
'Cause it looked like a protest against the project.
It
Right.
wasn't.
And
Wasn't-
that's how it was certainly perceived at the time, but I know who you're talking about, and I know that their reports were shoddy at best. And not forthcoming. I know who that one is. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was under the impression when you were picking the project or the GC was trying to get carpentry done. But unfortunately, they selected someone that is, I would say nefarious, but not particularly above board. Anyway, information is all, right? Because we only have 3 projects that have actually had a threshold to hit. No problem with Caramore Solar, it's fine. The Dean, it took 8 waivers to get them from do nothing relative to 75. Now, it wasn't a huge project. The one that we referenced earlier is the one on top of your waiver list, which is the Breeze. So those were granted a long time ago. Well, the Breeze is the one I'm referencing that just got denied by the IDA.
Surprised Burns couldn't make that, hit those numbers they had to.
Well, that's. Let me look at it.
The Breeze is the one, the old.
They're done, yeah.
Like I said, there's, I lose track of the names. I just go by the location. Oh, Ithaca Gun.
Trust me.
Mhm.
The one by the gorge, you know, what's the name of it? I don't know. I can't remember.
That one had two subs for contract or concrete, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so 9 waivers, and fell pretty short. Still. I don't know how much I can
51%.
say publicly, yeah, that one fell way short, and there were actually at least 3, I think 5 bidding attempts.
Mhm.
The GC at the time who first got the project bid it a couple times and couldn't get folks to bid. Then pulled off the site to say, look, we can't, we're not gonna be able to do this. The second GC came in, bid again and again, and I think. The bidders fatigue, I guess, just like, and I think there's. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. There are a lot of contractors who aren't interested in bidding on those projects. So it's like the best way I can liken it is like a pop fly and all the outfielders like, oh, no.
Not me.
Yeah, I don't want to catch that ball. And then it just thuds. So
Previous
Even-
histories allowed contractors to say,
Yeah.
we're gonna take a pass.
Yeah, and that's fair, and that's the message that needs to be carried to the IDA, and I think they got it loud and clear, because even though waivers were granted administratively,
Early on.
this is not a great table I threw it together, but yeah, like early, 24, 23, I mean, it was bad.
Mhm.
And then again, like the GC pull off and then another one and anyway.
Right.
Then much later in the game, we got, oh crap, we're gonna fall short. Here's a bunch of waiver requests. Like, yeah, I said denied, and there was a penalty imposed for the first time. So there's been 3, right? There's gonna be more coming that I think. And then that was actually the impetus for going back to this policy and saying, you know, the IDA really needs to decide on these, whether we're gonna grant them or not.
Yeah.
So, it's just informational on the dean. I don't wanna go through all this data because it will get overwhelming, but I encourage you to look at this, to reach out to me with any curious questions or stories. You know, like for instance, the thing you just said about the dean, I didn't know that,
Yeah.
right? I thought it was picketing the GC and you're like, but they sent the bid out, right? Like, so, anyway, this is for you to digest later, to think about, get back to
Good
me,
stuff.
if you would. What I really want to kind of talk about, if you're, unless anybody has any initial questions, we can move on to the Carpenter Park, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, and realizing data can be very overwhelming when presented in a huge tranche of it. Just take time, look at it. Carpenter Park's kind of cool. Because as I mentioned, October 21 to February 26, so what, 4.5 years of data, so much data. I prepared for you the tables of figures. I have for you the lists of by contractor. These, I should preface this, I did not want to share this list on the screen. I mean, these are, you as members of the labor committee, a member of the IDA, have access to the files that are in here, right? But we shouldn't be sending names out all over the place, right? But it's good information for you to look at, because then I have to go with these tables and figures, we have number of worker days, right? We have percent local by contractor, and then actually, if you look at the second page of your stapled packet there, that's where I've lumped them by type. It's not perfect, right? Realizing that sometimes a carpenter and a welder are from the same firm and they'll be together. But generally, I try to put them by contractor into buckets of scope of work. I'm just telling you, going through 10,000 plus lines of data by worker type is a bit much, right? And when you have that much data, I think it's safe enough to like kind of lump some together. But so lump contractors into worker type. That seems fair enough to me.
Yeah.
If you want me to go back and spend a week doing line by line, I could, but
Your end,
it's,
your end here, is that worker days?
yep.
Okay.
Yep, so worker days can be anything from an hour to a full day.
Yep.
Right, and it could be the same person that's back for 3 weeks, will be counted 15 times, right? So, I present this to you when we presented it early, and let's go through tables of figures and then we'll talk. In cutting data, I just try to find little patterns or interesting things we can look at if you're on figure 1. I just as an arbitrary cutoff for no real reason, I put in any contractor that had, 100 or more working days, worker days, right? Let's just look at them. But your list will tell you, you go all the way down to 2 working days on the corresponding table that I just gave you, right? Like, we don't need to look at all the little Tom, Dick, and Harrys that set up playground up, right? Well, let's look at the big guys. So you have worker days with the number at the end of the bar. And then you have percent local labor. So you can see Schuler Haas had a whole lot of worker days and a very good, right? The Schuler Haas always, that's never a problem when they get those jobs. Just information I'm looking at which contractors had a lot of working days and like what percent local were they? So Raycon, I think, is that? Raycon's carbon?
Edger. and then the
Edger.
inside.
Yeah, was that Edger? So, well, it's interesting because the Edger is over here with 285 working days, 65%. Must just be which side of the house they're on. Then.
You got a union shop, not a union shop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
like-
Chase, like BSI. So which one's the non-union? Right.
No, right, that's the union
Right,
side.
Okay.
Edgers.
Okay, so that's. Hold that out there. That's you. Interesting. That's an interesting point that comes out of this data comparison. All right, so let's go to the next one. Let's go to table 1, second page there. I'm just gonna throw this out there and then we'll have conversation. So again, this is just a table, a summary table.
Just the packet you gave us, looking at the packet.
No, in your tables and figures.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This contractor list did not get sent out. It's all printed in front of you right now.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I mean, just, it's sorted by percent local, right? Electricians, again, Schuler was really engaged in the process, doing great.
Oh, hold on, I know, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you do.
So Edger. Edger has a union side of that is, does concrete carpenter work, has laborers, masons. They are spelled RYCO.
Right.
This Raycon, RAYCON, they're out of Connecticut. They were they were not a local company to the area and, they were not, doesn't matter if they're union or non-union, they just weren't local to the area, they're different than the Rycon that would be local.
Yes, that,
Okay.
okay, right.
Okay, so, that's,
Good point of order. So, a summarized table of, local labor by scope of work. Again, those are aggregated, but, and you see, some scopes of work I would consider winning, right? Like electricians, tons of worker days, high percent local. Carpenters, opposite, right? Tons of worker days, the most worker days of all the scopes of work. Again, in aggregate data and one of the lowest percent local, right? So we don't all win equitably on these, we being scopes of work. I forgot to mention earlier, the IDA is agnostic whether it's union or not.
Right,
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It tends to be. Because if it's an outside firm and they're hiring locally, they don't know people either, they go through the halls, right? We're agnostic, but. Certain trades do well on certain projects and others do not. And it varies. Is the point, so, and then the next two figures are. Kind of different representations of that table, right? So you've got the first, figure 2, which is percent local, highest to lowest. And then the worker days are the actual data labels at the end. And then the figure 3, which is the last page there, number of worker days, highest to lowest, and percent local is the data label. So, as I referenced apprentice, I mean, it's just the thing that stands out to me in this one is the carpenters.
so I will,
So many worker days, so many, and
So-
not local.
so I'll make a point of a couple things that I need to pay attention to as a representative. And like I said, I look at this objectively from just putting local people to work, who, no matter what their affiliation is, right? But I see 2 companies on here that
And
work.
can you point out where you're on?
Henderson
You're on,
Johnson.
you're on the list.
I'm on this
This
list.
is the actual list of carpenters and their work, or there's
I see,
contractors and work.
I see Henderson Johnson. I also see, Airway Doors. They are both signatories of the carpenters. And I probably could have, if I was on the ball, said, hey, you need to have a couple guys, because what they have is, they'll just say, hey, we got the job and here's who's available, you gotta go down there and do this, right? And they had minimal days, they had you had 8 days for Airway Doors, and Henderson Johnson had 7 working days. So they probably just said, hey, these are the guys that are available. They didn't know anything about labor. Or I could have said, you guys gonna be down there, can you at least make sure there's 2 guys in your crews. You know, you're not sending
Yeah.
two guys from this area to Syracuse and bringing two guys down here,
Right.
which happens all the time. And it's just a matter of saying, hey, you gotta be aware of this to be helpful in the policies and everything down there. Where Airway Doors, they're out of Syracuse, and they would probably, if I'd have said, hey, could you get a couple guys, when you come down here for these 8 days, get a couple guys on, they would have done that, you know?
Mhm.
So, cause they gotta travel and crew, they travel all over the state. So.
Yeah, but, so it's just, this is just kind of an open discussion of how we can do better. So, but I see Rochester Davis Fetch up here. 275 working days,
So,
38%.
right, and that could have been better if the job hadn't got shut down and scuttled for like 2 months. Remember when they had the issue with the building?
Yeah, the
And,
pilots.
and we had to restart there. We had probably the majority of the workforce was local there. And then once they got scuttled, well, guys got shipped all over or had to go get work for other companies. And then we had to rebuild from there. And it just was a little bit more of a struggle to get, to do what we needed to do there.
So the numbers as it pertains to carpenters, and that's not all I want to talk about. I'm open to any other conversation, but may not be entirely accurate, but it does also, as you mentioned, point out Raycon, for instance, who had a whole ton of worker days too, who had 0% local labor. And so one other interesting trade that comes up, you either totally win or totally miss are the plumbers and pipe fitters too, like Comfort Systems. They're not, I don't know if they were on this show or not. Yes, they were. If Comfort's there, they got a million people down here, but they're not considered local to us. I don't know if that concerns their plumbers and steam fitters, because they're part of they may be, although I don't think it is. I don't think those employers are part of the union up there. But that's another one. It's all or nothing. Carpenters tend to be the same way. It's all or nothing, or proportionately speaking. Yeah, so you have, again, the 52 contractors on the first page, and I'll clean this up and I'll send it to you, Greg and Duck, for review, but
Actually, the Pro Carpet, the Pro Carpet has a union side.
Yeah, there's no breast.
Yeah, and that Pro Carpet, I've gotta believe that was majority of the Cuba Medical Building. Cause I remember when our floor layers were in there doing the flooring, so I talked to them personally, so. Most of them were from the area. So,
yeah. And we lumped all the 3 phases of the project together, so I don't, talk about. A lot to go back and separate that, but it's worth that. I think, Fred, you pointed out, you made a really good observation here that there's a communication breakdown here. So, when I, for instance, today or tomorrow, whenever it is, when Kelly and I are meeting with the other solar folks, I'm talking to the project lead and maybe, then the GC will be there, right? But, well, and do keep in mind that they didn't have who's the Rochester group that run the Carpenter Pride? I can't remember her. It's a Rochester. DeMarco, thank you. They didn't have the same meeting with me where they didn't have a threshold, right? So, and they weren't, they're just curious on the percentages overall, which is, again, I think they've been probably the easiest GC I've ever worked with, but they didn't have a threshold. Some of these projects come in, it matters, and somehow they need to get the message, the GC through our initial meeting, where what I said with the other one solar about, hey, wake up. Your percentages matter and you're being watched, but also the message from the trade side of talking to your folks and saying, hey, if you're doing work in Tompkins, let me know.
Right, we have.
Yeah, that's-
here.
yeah, or, hey, we're only coming in for 5 days, or we're gonna be there 2 weeks. Airways, whatever their deal is, I could have worked something out. So they're making sure, I need you guys as much to meet the local labor policy. There's a reason why this is here,
Yeah,
Because I don't think about it, it's just men working
Right,
hours coming in,
Mhm.
but now it's in relative to the local labor policy.
Mhm.
And hey, work with me, you said,
Mhm.
give us a call. We're in Tompkins, what do you need? Does it fall under this?
So that goes back into communication, so, Marcus takes over the,
Yeah,
Head of the
July 1st.
yeah, so Marcus is gonna know, and actually, we should make a note when we revise this policy. let's
Will
change it to Marcus,
This
right?
information stay the same or will that change?
It would change.
Yeah.
and
Okay, if
I'll
you
get a
could
meeting
get
on
one.
Wednesday, I'll make sure I get all that.
Okay, that'd be great, thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, so it is to let Marcus know, we will, you do that, Rick, if you're running and whatever,
Yeah.
right? Hey, man. When you get certified mail, open it, right?
Yeah.
And then tell everybody, or, at some point to get a list of, the trades,
Mhm.
contractors who are willing to work on projects of this scale. I said, we had our house remodeled, it's a team of like 3 guys, they'll build like 2 houses a year. The rule of thumb is if it's got a crane, it's come through the IDA, right? Like, I don't need them on the list. We're looking for the guys who can do, and gals who can do scalar work like that. That's really helpful to be able to give to them. So that's part of the communication, right? It's from us, the IDA and the developer or the project lead to the building trades council. It's from us, the building trades council, and the IDA to the lead. Here's your list of folks. Don't come looking for a waiver if you haven't called them. Right? And communication to your subs and allies. If you're doing work in town.
Known as a requirement, you shop your guys around.
I wanna know.
Right, like with AJ Glass and Mirror Glazers Ironworkers, they are a signatory. They're also signatory with the carpenters, but in that instance, I know the work that they did, they used mainly the glazers and ironworkers. But with that same thing, those were union representatives being conscious of saying, hey, they probably could have switched it around and could have probably had a 75% local labor here.
Right.
Because they have
Just by switching.
guys, just by switching, asking them to switch
Or
their rotation around of who's doing what.
Or conversely, one extra step in the communication is when, if it's a good actor, like AJ Glass and Mirror, for
Right.
instance, right? But just the timing of it is like,
Right.
we got guys or gals shipped off to this project. We're not gonna have your dozen people in the time you need to do it. Then that can go to the IDA and they can say, okay, so it's not we're not penalizing
Right.
it's okay with you all that like, oh, we just, our guys were moved off somewhere else. Like, this one's okay because they're still a good actor, a signatory, a good participant. It's great. All our halls are out on jobs.
Right.
That's great for everybody, really. But
Right, could the glazer and ironworkers went to them and said, knowing ahead of time, right? Saying when we get here, can we try to at least as a group get to 75% local labor, and how do you want to plan this or whatever? And do their best efforts, instead of like after the fact saying, oh, if I'd have known that, like I'm sitting here
The
going.
apprentice you pick up this year, like,
Yeah,
a local apprentice.
so, yeah, communications, actually, you just mentioned apprentices, that's one other thing that would come.
Huge.
To talk about food for thought, and I would say we should meet again, like the things that you've learned today and digest, to come back and do this again. You referenced, Fred, the affordable housing exemption, okay, great, discussion, right? One other thing that's just something to think about is we were concerned initially when we contracted Loki Grill for third party, because we're gonna pass that on to you, so. Like Yellow Barn tomorrow, it's tomorrow, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
Hey, by the way, you're gonna put a percent of your total project incentive package in escrow to be monitored, right? In the several projects we've had, there was no one like, wait a minute, they're like, okay, right, so it's that. One additional thing that would warrant some further communication, I think it would be better if we were all together to talk about this, but hey. They didn't seem to mind on that little 0.5% increase. What about money into an apprenticeship training program, right?
right.
If you're gonna be part of this policy or you're gonna want waivers, then we don't wanna make it punitive, we just wanna make it, hey, you're part of this program and that pays for local labor, that helps you meet your local labor requirement, right? Like, food for thought of asking them to pay into another escrow for workforce training. Doesn't just have to be hours. I'm not, IED has a workforce training, but it doesn't have to be hours, right? there could be a approved list of folks to whom the money gets distributed equitably, or this is just an idea, but like the Community Housing Development Fund, the
Mhm.
IDA renders a fee, and there's a committee that decides how that money is distributed, whatever, right? But I would say nobody yet has balked at the monitoring fee. I doubt they would for local aid either.
One thing, using Yellow Barn or Caramar Solar, let's talk about. Sometimes they have state funding, sometimes they have some federal funding kicked in as subsidies. And then whatever they have allowed to go to the IDA with, right? It's a fair question to ask them. Do you have any federal or state funding involved, number one, as a subsidy? And are there any apprentice language policies tied to that? And I'll use the wind farms in Steuben County as an example. They have apprentice language tied to them, and whether they're using PLAs with us, but if they weren't using PLAs, they still have to have apprentice language tied to that. And every contractor, it's their union or non-union, has to abide by the federal guidelines because the money and the stipulations tied to the money that they have. So it's a fair question to ask in those instances. Do you have any, and then
If they're already supporting an apprenticeship program, then maybe they can pass, but.
but it is a fair question to ask because some of them might say, well, as long as they don't know about it, we'll take care of it.
So the application, it does, in the financial section, the application does reference any state and federal incentives that the project is
Right.
receiving. So that could be something like the IDA just updated their application. So it's something though that during a meeting, when a project is presented, that question could be asked if there are any apprentice programs
Right,
that go.
because sometimes there
along
might
with that.
not be any stipulations for that.
Because when I do the community benefit memo, it will break down the total of incentives and typically where they come from, so that could be, like, it could draw attention to that.
I like that idea.
Well, I think it warrants further discussion. This is a great first move, and I think we could meet again, but. I think what probably would help me the most is to sit down and just ask some questions about registered apprenticeship programs, how they work. How, if you maybe, Fred particularly would think about it, but for this group's benefit of like, what bases are not being covered in encouraging the use of apprenticeships or registered programs, and how might we be able to help?
Right.
We don't want to do anything arbitrary, just because we can, but there is a spot in there that I think could benefit trades training programs through these projects. I just don't know which ones and how many and to what scale.
I do believe on some of this the solar, as far as the state funding, they have apprentice plans tied into it. It's the new governor has been in office. I think it's around 15%.
Okay.
I know they're out there, but sometimes they don't come with those attachments
Yeah.
because it's a different funding source and they didn't have that.
Nobody asked or nobody's watching.
That's
It's,
right, so.
But this is a very base and generic statement, but like, you were talking about the racks on solar fields. Well, if we keep farming out work on the racks, then why not put money towards teaching people how to do the racks?
Yes.
Right,
No,
right, like, it's an
I like your
example of like,
Right.
stop farming that out, keep it
Yeah.
here, by the way, we're gonna train you. Just food for thought if you all would have it, I think we'd meet again. I think this.
No, I think we've opened a lot of good discussion here and we can build off of that. And not that we're trying to reinvent the wheel, you're just trying to tighten up and do what's right for your community. and
Definitely.
taxpayers.
Little bit at a time, and again, since this policy was passed, I mean, it was post-COVID. There was not a lot moving in here. So, there are 3 that are one closed. I don't know if the Breeze is closed. We'll consider it closed.
Yeah.
Closed. Caramore's ongoing. There's every other one from now on is gonna have these requirements. Every other one. And everyone from now on, since April 10th of last year, is going through Loki Brill. So we're getting weekly reports if we wanted to look at those. I mean, like we're getting better.
Yeah.
Incrementally. And helps by having these conversations more regularly.
And
Just sitting here looking at data actually gives me a headache,
Mhm.
and I'm the one looking at it, and there's so much more that can be done with it, but. Just regular meetings to go over these topics
Right,
would be
and-
helpful.
And, anybody that's coming to Tompkins County understands that there's opportunities to build here, developers and whoever. So they know if there's an opportunity to build housing, affordable housing, student housing, mixed use development projects. They've done their studies, they're coming here, they're gonna do it, and if they want incentives, I don't think they'll ever have any problem adhering to them incentives, because they know at the end of the day, they're developing something that they're looking to profit off from as part of their business. So we know them, there's an opportunity there, we come in, there's the policies. All right, whatever we gotta do, we're moving forward this project, it's gonna be beneficial to our business.
This is what I'm talking about. Nobody's come in and been like,
Right.
well, I don't think we could do it
Yeah.
now. Like, no, they're always like, all right, how much do I pay?
Yeah.
Cause we're moving forward.
Right,
But especially with this current board, there is definitely the understanding that it's a contract though. You're coming here to do business, you want incentives, you need to do what
Yeah.
no, it's,
what the expectations
fair.
are, and that's where these types of meetings and conversations definitely help to guide the.
And kudos to the board for
Mhm.
stepping up and saying,
Yeah.
just wrapping somebody on the wrist. And what, can you tell these guys, Prentice was at the meeting, but Rick and, Fred were not. What was, so the project came in,
51%.
it wasn't quite over, but that by the time
The
it was
breach.
realized they weren't gonna get there, Breed's at
Mhm.
51%. The goal is 75%, and there was a percentage per dollar
Right,
percentage.
so,
You don't have to say the number.
we worked with with IDA council, on the penalty fee for not achieving the local labor requirement, and that percentage that the delta that was missed. That was the percentage of incentive that they had to pay to the IDA. So,
It's a start. This
mhm.
is the first time.
It's good to do that.
There's,
Yep.
yeah,
And then
Yeah,
that
okay.
that sets the precedent going
Yeah.
forward,
seems
so.
reasonable.
I always say at some point, there's always one example that's made that everybody goes, whoop, we heard
Mhm.
about that. and
There is teeth.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes, yes.
Well, prior to that, and to the IDA's credit, it was really subject to the recapture policy, but the IDA's recaptured incentives from one project, and it took 10 years, and it was a legal
Right.
kerfuffle, like trying to parallel park a freighter. It just wasn't gonna happen, right? So that consideration and that rendering actually made sense, and it was faster, and said, yeah, this is it. Or, or else, or we'll go get the rest of it,
Right,
and or don't come back here for another project,
Right, or your incentives are, the original incentives are gone.
right. Well, and it
which.
caught the attention of their bank, because the bank was notified, the GC, their attorney, everyone was notified, and my phone blew up.
Everybody's,
There it is.
right, two ways to make change in this world, right? Your vote and your wallet,
Yeah,
and people usually pay attention to the second one.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
yeah, thanks a lot. This is
Mhm.
helpful for me to have these
Thank
conversations,
you.
for us to get on the same page, and if I may propose that maybe we meet again in 3 months' time, 3 or 4 months' time, right? And just keep this routine, just discussion.
I know that Greg's still on, right?
yep, Greg and Duxon are on.
And Greg is part of the Tompkins County Legislature, right?
Mhm.
So I do have something that if this board and the legislator would entertain, is that we have developed a PowerPoint presentation, and I've been part of it with our state political office, through the council, that gives you about a 25-minute look into, wage theft, misclassification, worker compensation fraud, and the comparison from how a legal job site is organized and runs to how an illegal job site. But it's engaging in all those, breaking of the law. And if we could figure out between getting county ledge, IDA, and different, parties involved, we would love to present that at some point, if we could come up with a time or a date. And I'm gonna tell you that I've been working on this all winter long, and we've kind of rolled out, did a little test with it, and we redeveloped it again, and it's pretty informational. And I think the biggest piece of things is educational of what's going on out there and what to look, and it also would help county ledge, IDA boards and so on, know what to look for in different things that when they're asking the questions and doing all this stuff, they can say, hey. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a really, and it's a fair piece, it's a fair look at what's going on. And it's encompassed around what New York State has put into laws that are there for everybody to say, hey, this is what's going on, and there's a law in place, and.
I learn something new every time. I don't know when the appropriate time or place to, I
Right.
mean, I'd watch it myself. Never someone.
So if you wanted to come to a Housing and Economic Development Committee meeting of the legislature, that's probably the most appropriate committee for that conversation to be had, which I chair. So either Kelly or Kurt can give you my email, and if you want to reach out, I can connect you with our clerk so we can get you scheduled for one of our upcoming meetings. And then we can let members of the IDA know and other members of the legislature that at that meeting we could, we'll have this presentation discussion, and if they want to tune in or join us in person, that they can do that.
Okay, let me, I got your email in the email chain that we all have for this committee. I'll get you something together and I'll include Kelly, Kurt and you, and then we'll run with it from there.
Yeah, we'll definitely get you scheduled in a committee at the legislature, and would be a good discussion to have.
Yeah, totally.
The way we developed this, just to give you a snapshot, is the economics effects to the area. And we hone in on county by county. So our presentation will show you, because of this is going on, how it affects Tompkins County and the amount of revenue that's being lost state to county on down.
Wow.
And it's based off of studies that are done out there by certain foundations. And I'm telling you what, it's really eye-opening. We've worked really hard on this for a while, and it's not to bash anybody, it's to open everybody's eyes of what's going on out there. And that the government, local government can have an effect on combating this. And making sure that every dollar counts toward with the taxpayers.
All right, well, yeah, I'll look forward to that email, and then we'll get you scheduled at a meeting that's convenient for all.
Very good.
Oh, good.
I'll come watch that.
Thanks for joining, Greg.
See you guys.
Thanks, Greg.
And Doug. Thank you.
We need to make a motion.
Motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
So adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Will.
Monday morning.